Have you ever asked yourself, why do the men I love hurt me the most? Why is it that the very person who promises to protect your heart ends up being the one who breaks it? And if you've ever laid awake at night replaying conversations, trying to figure out what you did wrong, this video is for you. But here's the truth that no one talks about enough. It's not always about what you did. Sometimes it's about what they never learned. This isn't just a bad boy story or a simple case of mismatched love languages. This is deep. This is generational trauma, emotional suppression, and unhealed wounds, all crashing into your open, vulnerable heart. And I need you to hear me when I say this. You loving someone deeply doesn't give them permission to destroy you slowly. In this video, we're going to unpack why men hurt the women who love them. Not just with words or neglect, but sometimes in the most confusing, silent, invisible ways. This video could change the way you see love forever. It's not about blaming, it's about understanding. It's about breaking a cycle. And most importantly, it's about you getting your power back. So stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to see patterns you never noticed before. You're going to feel less alone, and you're going to stop mistaking pain for passion. Let's begin. Love should feel safe, right? But for so many women, being in love with a man can feel like an emotional roller coaster. One moment, he's affectionate, attentive, maybe even vulnerable, and the next, he's cold, distant, or suddenly irritated by the very things he used to love about you. It's confusing, and it hurts, but it's not random. What most people don't understand is that many men are not taught how to emotionally exist in love. They're taught how to chase, how to win, how to impress, but not how to sit in the quiet discomfort of emotional intimacy. So when a woman loves them deeply, unapologetically, it triggers something internal that they don't know how to process. Not because you did anything wrong, but because real closeness makes them feel exposed. And for a man who was raised to believe vulnerability equals weakness, love suddenly feels dangerous. That's why you might notice they pull away after intense moments. They get defensive when you just want connection. Or they push your buttons just to feel in control again. Some men unconsciously sabotage the love they crave because being truly seen terrifies them more than being alone. They'd rather be distant than emotionally naked. They'd rather disappoint you than disappoint the idea of who they think they're supposed to be. Strong, independent, unaffected. Here's the twist, they do love you. But their version of love comes with a survival instinct. And unless they've done deep emotional work, love will always activate their defense mechanisms. Ones that were built long before you ever walked into their life. You're not imagining the shift in their energy. You're not overreacting when you feel the emotional door close after an intimate moment. And no, it's not your job to fix him. Your job is to understand this. Love is not meant to feel like confusion wrapped in craving. The most painful thing is loving someone who only knows how to survive connection, not build with it. But once you see that clearly, you begin to choose differently. And that's where your healing begins. When we talk about why men hurt the women who love them, we have to go all the way back to where it started. Not in adulthood, not in the relationship, but in childhood. Because long before he ever met you, he was already learning what love meant. And for many men, that early definition of love was built on silence, pressure, or emotional neglect. Picture this. A little boy falls and scrapes his knee. He's crying, not just from the pain, but from the shock, the fear, the vulnerability of being hurt. But instead of comfort, he hears, "Man up," or "Stop crying like a girl." It seems harmless, right? But that's the moment the emotional shutdown begins. That's the moment he starts to believe that expressing pain is wrong, that feelings are weakness, that love isn't about connection, it's about performance and control. Now fast forward, that little boy grows up into a man who has no emotional vocabulary. He knows how to flirt, he knows how to pursue, he knows how to win you, but he doesn't know how to sit in discomfort. He doesn't know how to say, "I'm scared," or "I don't know how to love you the way you deserve." Instead, he pulls away, he shuts down. Or worse, he lashes out in ways he can't even fully explain. Not because he doesn't care, but because he was never taught how to care with presence. He was taught to cope with distance. So many men carry emotional scars from fathers who were absent or mothers who were overwhelmed, from homes where affection was earned, not given, from environments where the only acceptable emotion was anger. And that trauma doesn't just disappear when he gets into a relationship. It follows him into adulthood like a silent shadow, shaping how he responds to love, to intimacy, to you. And here's the heartbreaking part. When you love a man who's emotionally repressed, your affection can feel threatening to him. Your openness can feel invasive. Your emotional needs can feel like demands, even when they're not. So he pulls back, not to hurt you, but to protect the only emotional structure he knows, walls. You might try to love him harder, hoping it'll soften him, but love doesn't undo trauma. Healing does. And healing doesn't happen in silence or through someone else's sacrifice. It happens when he becomes aware of his own story. Until then, your love will keep hitting a wall. It was never meant to break. This is why relationships are not just about chemistry. They're about capacity. Does he have the emotional capacity to hold you, see you, respond to you, or is he still at war with his past? The truth is, you can't love the trauma out of someone, but you can love yourself enough to recognize when someone's emotional survival tactics are wounding your soul. And that realization alone is powerful. It's the beginning of your freedom. It's one of the most painful truths to confront. Why is it that the women who love the hardest, who give the most, who show up with open hearts and pure intentions, are often the ones who get hurt the worst? If you're a good woman, loyal, empathetic, nurturing, you've probably asked yourself, why do I keep attracting men who can't love me the way I deserve? But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes your goodness makes you a target. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something unresolved in them. A man who hasn't done the emotional work, who hasn't faced his pain or acknowledged his fears, will often feel drawn to a good woman like a magnet. Your light, your softness, your consistency, those things are comforting to him. But they also expose what he lacks. When you show up fully, with kindness and emotional depth, you mirror back all the places where he's still wounded, emotionally blocked, or immature. And for someone who's emotionally unready, that's not inspiring, it's intimidating. Instead of stepping up to match your emotional availability, he may start to devalue it. He may call you too sensitive, too emotional, too much. Not because you are, but because that's easier than admitting he feels inadequate next to your depth. He might start testing your love, withdrawing affection, or acting out in subtle ways just to see how much you'll tolerate. And if you keep loving him through it, if you keep justifying his behavior, he learns something dangerous, that you're willing to accept less than you deserve in the name of love. That's when the dynamic shifts from partnership to emotional imbalance. And whether he realizes it or not, he starts to treat your heart like something he can hurt, because it always comes back. The sad irony is, you become the emotional home he never had, but he doesn't know how to live in it. So instead of appreciating it, he resents it. He pokes holes in it. He tries to tear it down, not out of hatred for you, but out of discomfort with himself. But here's the truth. You are not here to rehabilitate broken men. You are not a landing pad for someone avoiding their growth. You are a mirror of what's possible in love. And if someone turns that mirror into a weapon, it's not your fault. It's just a sign that your love is valuable, and it should only be shared with someone capable of holding it with care. It usually starts small, a delayed response to a text, a vague excuse for not calling back, less eye contact, less warmth, less presence. At first, you might brush it off. He's just busy, you tell yourself. He'll come around. But over time, you start to notice the pattern. The man who once seemed so emotionally engaged begins to retreat, not physically, but emotionally. What you're witnessing is something so many women in relationships experience, but rarely understand: the cycle of emotional withdrawal. This cycle isn't always loud. In fact, it's often subtle. A shift in tone, a change in routine, a growing sense of distance that you can't quite explain, but you feel it. And what makes it so damaging is that it doesn't usually happen all at once. It's a gradual erosion of emotional intimacy, and it leaves you constantly guessing, did I do something wrong? Did something change? For emotionally unavailable men, withdrawal is not always a conscious decision. It's a survival instinct. When intimacy starts to feel too real, when the connection gets too deep, it activates old fears. Fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, fear of being exposed. Rather than risk feeling those emotions, they shut down, often without even realizing they're doing it. You, on the other hand, respond by reaching out more. You try to talk, to reconnect, to fix what feels broken. But the more you lean in, the more he pulls away. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because he's emotionally overwhelmed and doesn't have the tools to process it. So he disconnects to protect himself. This creates a loop. The more distant he becomes, the more effort you put in. The more effort you give, the more pressure he feels. And round it goes, until one day you wake up exhausted, drained, and unsure of how you even got here. The danger of this cycle is that it convinces you to work harder for less. You start compromising your emotional needs just to maintain the relationship. You minimize your hurt. You lower your expectations. You silence your instincts, all to keep someone close who is emotionally drifting away. But here's what you need to remember. Love should not feel like chasing someone who's always one step ahead of your heart. Real connection isn't about pulling teeth for attention. It's about mutual effort, mutual vulnerability, mutual presence. If someone constantly withdraws when things get real, you have to stop asking what's wrong with you and start asking whether they're even capable of emotional intimacy. Not everyone is, and that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to protect yourself from becoming collateral damage in someone else's internal battle. Recognizing this cycle is the first step to breaking it, because you deserve love that doesn't retreat when it gets close. You deserve someone who leans in, not away, when your heart is on the line. In the beginning, it can feel like love. He wants to know where you are, who you're with, when you'll be home. He gets jealous, but calls it just caring. He says he wants to protect you, but slowly what once felt like attention starts to feel like surveillance. What once felt like love begins to feel like control. By the time you realize it, you're already questioning yourself more than you're questioning him. Control rarely shows up with a warning. It hides behind compliments, behind concern, behind phrases like, I just want what's best for you. At first, it sounds sweet, harmless, even romantic, but then it becomes possessive. He wants to be the only one you go to, the only one you depend on, the only one who really gets you. He starts to isolate you. Not always physically, but emotionally. Friends suddenly become a threat. Independence becomes an issue. Your success, that might make him insecure. This shift from love to control doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, manipulative, and deeply confusing. You start to second guess your instincts. Maybe you are overreacting. Maybe you are being too sensitive. That's exactly how emotional control works. It makes you doubt yourself until you rely on him to define what's real. You might find yourself apologizing for things you never did, changing how you dress, checking in more than you're comfortable with, silencing your opinions to avoid starting a fight. And the worst part, you keep telling yourself it's just because he loves you. But love doesn't restrict. It doesn't demand silence. It doesn't ask you to shrink. What's really happening here is fear. A man who hasn't dealt with his own insecurity and abandonment issues may use control to feel safe. He fears losing you. So instead of building trust, he builds a cage. Not out of hate, but out of his own unresolved wounds. And you, being a good woman, try to empathize with his pain. You try to understand it, to love him through it. But in doing so, you start to disappear. The truth is, control disguised as love is not love. It's emotional domination. And no matter how much compassion you have for his backstory, his childhood, or his pain, none of that justifies making you feel small in a relationship where you're supposed to grow. Real love creates space. It doesn't trap you, monitor you, or punish your independence. It celebrates your wholeness. It doesn't try to own it. So if you've been feeling more watched than seen, more managed than supported, it's time to ask yourself, is this love or is it control? And if the answer is control, the most loving thing you can do is choose yourself. Because no matter how much you love someone, you should never have to lose your freedom to keep their affection. Emotional manipulation doesn't always look like shouting, slamming doors, or harsh words. In fact, the most dangerous kind is quiet, subtle enough to make you question if it's even happening. But once you start noticing the patterns, the red flags become impossible to ignore. It often begins with guilt. You express a need or a boundary and suddenly you're the one in the wrong. He flips the script. Maybe he says, I guess I just can't do anything right, or you're never happy with me. Now, instead of feeling heard, you feel guilty for wanting something basic. That's not communication. That's manipulation. Then comes the gaslighting. You start to feel like you can't trust your own memory or feelings. You tell him something hurt you and he says that never happened, or you're too sensitive, or worse, you're imagining things. He makes you feel like you're overreacting to what's actually real pain. It's not a disagreement, it's emotional distortion designed to protect his ego at the cost of your sanity. Another red flag is love bombing followed by withdrawal. One day, he's overwhelming you with affection, making promises, telling you everything you've ever wanted to hear. The next day, he's cold, distant, or punishing you with silence. This creates an addictive loop. You're constantly trying to get back to that high, that moment when he made you feel like you were everything. And that's exactly the point. Emotional manipulators give just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to make you feel secure. You'll also notice a lack of accountability. He always has an excuse. He had a rough day. He didn't mean it that way. You misunderstood. Somehow, he's never the one responsible, even when his actions clearly caused harm. Over time, you start to internalize his behavior as your fault. And that's the most dangerous part. Manipulation makes you the problem in your own mind. And then there's the fake vulnerability. Sometimes manipulators will open up just enough, share a sad story, cry at the right moment, talk about their dark past, not to build intimacy, but to disarm you, to get you to drop your guard, to make you stay when your gut says leave. Vulnerability should feel mutual and healing, not strategic. If any of this feels familiar, you are not crazy. You are not difficult. You are not too emotional. You are waking up. Emotional manipulation is not always obvious, but it's always harmful. And recognizing the signs is the first step in breaking free. Because love is not supposed to make you feel confused, small, or unsure of yourself. Love should make you feel safe. Breaking the cycle of pain and confusion in relationships isn't easy, but it's possible. It starts with a simple but powerful truth. Healing begins with you. No one else can do it for you. And no one else is responsible for your emotional freedom. When you realize that, everything changes. The first step is awareness. You have to recognize the patterns. Those moments when love felt more like pain, when you were left feeling unseen, unheard, or less than. Awareness isn't about blaming yourself or your partner. It's about understanding the dynamics at play and how they impact you. Once you see it clearly, you stop unconsciously replaying the same story over and over. Next comes acceptance. This means being gentle with yourself for any role you played in the cycle, without judgment or shame. It's about acknowledging that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. It's about forgiving yourself for staying in situations that hurt you, and for hoping love would be different. Acceptance creates space for growth because it frees you from the burden of guilt and self-blame. Healing also requires setting boundaries. This can be scary, especially if you're used to putting others' needs ahead of your own. But boundaries are essential. They protect your energy, your peace, and your heart. Boundaries teach others how to treat you. They show that your love isn't unconditional when it comes to disrespect or neglect. Saying no, walking away, or demanding respect isn't selfish, it's self-love. Another crucial step is rebuilding your relationship with yourself. Many women who love deeply lose touch with their own desires, feelings, and worth. Take time to reconnect with what brings you joy, peace, and confidence. This might mean pursuing passions you abandoned, spending time alone, journaling your thoughts, or seeking therapy. The more you nurture yourself, the stronger your foundation becomes for future relationships. Healing also involves learning to recognize healthy love. This means noticing when someone truly listens, respects your boundaries, and shows up consistently, not just with words, but actions. Healthy love doesn't push you to shrink or change who you are. It invites you to grow alongside someone who values you fully. Remember, healing is not linear. Some days will feel like progress, others might feel like setbacks. That's normal. Be patient with yourself and honor your emotional journey. Celebrate the small victories, the moments when you choose peace over chaos, self-respect over compromise, and growth over fear. Lastly, surround yourself with support. Healing doesn't mean going it alone. Trusted friends, mentors, or counselors can provide the encouragement and perspective you need when doubts creep in. Sharing your story with those who truly see you can be one of the most freeing experiences on your path to recovery. Breaking the pattern means choosing yourself every day. It means refusing to settle for less than you deserve and believing in the possibility of love that uplifts, heals, and nourishes. The moment you commit to that, you're no longer a victim of the past. You're the author of your own future. Reclaiming your power and self-worth after experiencing pain in love is one of the bravest things you can do. It's about stepping back into your own light and realizing that your value isn't defined by how someone else treated you, but by the strength and love you hold inside yourself. This journey is not just about healing wounds. It's about rediscovering who you are at your core. Reclaiming your power means reclaiming your voice. It means speaking your truth clearly and confidently, without fear of rejection or judgment. When you do this, you set a new standard, not just for others, but for yourself. You refuse to shrink to make someone else comfortable. You refuse to silence your needs and desires. Your voice becomes a beacon that attracts respect, kindness, and genuine connection. For too long, you might have believed the lies whispered by pain, that you weren't enough, that your love wasn't worthy, that your heart deserved less. But those lies are not your truth. Your true power lies in recognizing your inherent worth, without conditions, without apology. It's the power to stand tall even when your heart feels heavy, to say no to what doesn't serve you, and to say yes to what lifts your soul. It also means taking responsibility for your healing and growth. This isn't about blaming yourself for what happened, but about owning your path forward. You have the power to decide how you respond to past hurt. You can choose to let it break you or to let it build you. Every step you take towards self-love is a step away from pain and toward freedom. Self-worth is deeply tied to the way you treat yourself. Are you nurturing your body, mind, and spirit? Are you honoring your boundaries? Are you celebrating your achievements, no matter how small? When you begin to treat yourself with the respect and kindness you deserve, you send a powerful message to the world and to yourself that you matter. Surround yourself with people who uplift you, those who remind you of your brilliance and encourage your growth. Cut ties with those who diminish your light. You deserve to be in spaces where you're valued just as you are. As we wrap up this conversation, I want you to remember one vital thing. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by the love and respect you give yourself. No matter what you've been through, no matter how many times your heart has been bruised or misunderstood, your capacity to love and be loved remains powerful and real. At the end of the day, reclaiming your power is about becoming the heroine of your own story. It's about standing in your truth, walking in your purpose, and loving yourself fiercely. Because when you do, you attract the kind of love that reflects that same fierce respect and devotion back to you. You are powerful, you are worthy, and your best chapter is still ahead. Healing takes time, and it's okay to move at your own pace. What matters most is that you never stop believing in the possibility of a love that uplifts rather than diminishes you. The journey you're on right now is about reclaiming your voice, your boundaries, and your joy. It's about breaking free from patterns that no longer serve you and stepping into a future where your emotional safety is a priority, not an afterthought. You don't have to settle for less than what you deserve ever. Real love honors your whole self, flaws and all, and inspires you to grow without losing who you are. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is learning to trust again. Trust yourself, trust your intuition, and trust that you can create healthy connections. It's normal to feel vulnerable and uncertain, but remember, vulnerability is strength in disguise. It's the courage to show up as your